What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of epic conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations.
Something's got to separate you from the rest. So you got to be willing to do whatever.
In my experience, Black men have struggles like having community with each other.
But she represents the mammy stereotype.
Now that was epic. I needed that. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And since 2020, we have reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. So as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're broadcasting live on February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. We here in Toronto, we got hit with an incredible snowstorm last night. Now, for some reason, Mother Nature isn't predicting any snow on Valentine's Day. Very interesting. So, excuse reduction for Valentine's Day. So just joking aside, looking forward to it. And really and truly, Valentine's Day is every day. Every day we should lead with love. Agreed? 100%. And it's also Black History Month. We're right in the middle of Black History Month, or others would call it African Heritage Month. And there have been celebrations going all around the Greater Toronto area. And let's keep African history alive, not only in February, but every day. Find some history. And the best way to start, through my lens, if you're of African descent, in your own family. You don't have to look on a screen. Speak with someone in your family, and you'll find out so much heritage in your own family. So I am excited about this epic conversation we're having tonight. I've had a number of conversations during this month about Black history, African history, but I always like bringing up new friends. New friends. And the funny thing is, I didn't know about them, but they heard about me. So I don't know. Am I doing something okay once in a while? I don't know. I'm just figuring things out. So I'm just having a lot of fun. Let's see. Someone is already in the building. Okay, we got that comment there. All right. I'm not going to take up a lot of time because I want to showcase these wonderful brother and sister to you worldwide. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go on a break, and in I'd say about a minute or two, we'll bring them up to have them shine their light on you and through you. So 30 seconds, we'll be right back. What is wrong? What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations.
Something's got to separate you from the rest. So you got to be willing to do whatever.
In my experience, Black men have struggles like having community with each other.
But she represents the mammy stereotype.
Now that was epic. I needed that. All right, we are back. So a few general rules here. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Also, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm on, please feel free to email me, dr.vibe@vibeshow.com. So a little quick thing here. In helping educators plan for Black History Month, Nelson Education, Canada's leading and longest-standing education content provider, has updated a series of content in Edwin. I'll show you Edwin in just a moment, the company's digital learning platform. So if you're working on stories or need source or experts who can comment on how to include the Black experience and diverse perspectives in the classroom, we have the right people here today. Greg Birkett and Coleen Birkett. They're brother and sister now. Don't get any ideas. They're bro and sis. So we're going to bring them up and say, good evening.
Good evening.
Wow. In unison. Love it. How we doing today?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
How did you know about me and I did not know about you?
You're cooler than us, man.
Sorry, I don't have the nice hat for the lid that you got going on there, brother. Love it. Absolutely love the lid that you're showing here. So let's get some things started. Can you, each of you, share a little bit of your background with our family today?
Okay.
All right. Okay, so I'm Coleen, and I am a teacher. Been teaching for many years. I have a sense of adventure, and so I combine that with teaching. So I've taught in the Bay Islands of Honduras. I've also taught in Bermuda, and I've taught I've taught here in Toronto.
So after last night, are you thinking about going back there?
I had a fleeting thought.
I'm just asking.
Fleeting thought.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So so I have a rich and varied experience. I teach math and English. I've also taught science. I have qualifications in library as well. And I think that's it. But I love learning.
Enough.
Oh, special education. I love learning. I love teaching. And so, the more I can learn, the more I can offer, then, I go for it. And so right now, I've also worked as an instructional coach as well with the Toronto District School Board. And right now working as an educational consultant with my brother, Birkett Educational Consultants. Prior to teaching, I also did some work in the public health laboratories for the Ministry of Health. So wide and varied background. And I love to write. And so here I am.
100%. Bro, follow up.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow.
Okay.
We know you can bring it.
But yeah, no, I'm an educator as well. The subjects that I taught, history and English, those were my specialties. And I also was a guidance counselor for a while. I coached sports, so I coached basketball and track and field as well. I am a performing artist, so I perform slam poetry, spoken word. I also write plays. One of my plays was in the Toronto Fringe Festival.
So I have to ask, who gets less sleep?
I think it's a tie.
Okay, all right.
Neither of us are sleeping, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, before we go any further, I did talk about the website that Nelson has, and I do want to show it here at the front end. So I just want to give people a look at the website right at the front end. So here is the Nelson website, and I'm going to put up the link in just a moment, but also on any of the platforms that you're watching the replay on, other than LinkedIn, you'll be able to get the link for the website in the comments section. But this is the Nelson website. As you can see, they're very engaged. As you say, they're very engaged in classroom engagement, and it starts here. So just want to make sure that if you are looking for engagement in the classroom with great educational content providers, Nelson.com is your jam, as we like to say. Right. So let's get just first conversation piece. What inspired you each of you to focus on educating, writing, and representation?
Well, a lot of it is based on our own lived experience. There were certain deficits in the classroom as we were growing up. We didn't get to learn about ourselves. We had to go on our own and look for it. And so we wanted to change that, for this generation. And it's something that's been ongoing. If you look at educational research from the 70s and 80s and 90s, there have been people who've been working to get this content into the classroom, to get the Black Canadian experience in the classroom. And so we want to be able to do our part to help that to move forward and make it more of a reality across the curriculum. I know you've got something.
Well, for me, it's similar, right? I mean, I went through the education system, K to 12, and interestingly enough, there's a Black educator in Canada everyone respects. Her name's Afua Cooper,
Yes.
And she said, that it's quite possible for an individual to be educated here in Canada and actually take Canadian studies in post-secondary and graduate and not know that there was 200 years of enslavement here in Canada. And that was definitely my experience. So kindergarten to grade 12, didn't get any of it. I remember taking a grade 11 history class, and it was American history, and we talked about enslavement for maybe a period or two. And then after that, we watched the movie Glory featuring Denzel Washington. And that was my education on Black history in its entirety from kindergarten to grade 12. So there's something wrong with that. And we felt that there's a gap. And, as educators, then we also realize that there's gaps in educators' education. So if they've got gaps in their education, then the education that they're delivering is going to be full of gaps as well. So we felt like we needed to jump in there and do something. We're not the only ones, but we are. What we like to do is we actually like to specialize in something that we call the vertical cross-curricular approach, meaning that we want to infuse the Black Canadian experience, not the African American. There's a difference, right? There are some similarities, but there are differences. So the Black Canadian experience from kindergarten to grade 12 across disciplines. So not just in social studies or social sciences, but in French, in history, in phys ed, in drama, any discipline, science, math, right? Just so that students understand that this isn't something that just shows up in a course that you might be interested in, or or one time out of the year in February. This is something that runs through your educational experience throughout the year from kindergarten to grade 12. And it's really important learning for everyone.
Right. And if you really want to learn something, you have to be immersed in it. Yeah. So if you're just getting it in one area and at one time of the year, then it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be seen as something that's just a natural part of the fabric of education.
Great. A conversation piece. How do you apply your lived experience to your teaching and writing?
You want to start this?
It's to be authentic and to be real in the classroom. You have to bring yourself to your teaching practice, right? That's what I think, anyways. So when I'm teaching, they're getting me, and they're getting all of me, right? So I'm not parking my identity at the door. I'm bringing all of that in with me. I'm bringing and my I'm unapologetically Black. I'm not going to come in and water anything down. And my Blackness doesn't. I don't bring my Blackness into the classroom in a way that puts anyone else's ethnicity down. It's just, this is who I am, and you're gonna get the real me. So I feel that just the authenticity of my approach, my pedagogy, my teaching practice, it's connected to my identity. And I think that's really important for students to see, not just Black students, but all students, because we live in a diverse society, right? So we don't want you coming out of our school system not being prepared or ready to share this space, this world with others who don't look like you or who may not have your background. So when I come in, I'm introducing you to my intersectional identity, my Blackness, my maleness, all of that's coming together, and I'm giving you all of that. And of course, that's going to impact my writing as well, because I want you to be able to understand where I'm coming from, so that you're a more well-rounded, not just student, but citizen in our community, in our society.
Yeah. And for me, it's pretty much the same thing as well. In the classroom, making sure that I connect with everyone. So, the students who are Black and they may have certain ways of expressing themselves, I encourage that, because it's them and because I can relate to it, and I let them know that I can relate to it. And, same thing with in writing, where, I'm going to write about things that students can relate to, that all students can relate to, and allow them to see themselves and to see that there's something about me that can connect with them. So even students who may not be as vocal as other students, I make a point of being able to connect with them, because I wasn't a vocal student myself, right?
Oh.
So
surprise, huh?
Yeah, really. Okay. So why do you feel it's critical to include the Black experience and diverse perspectives in the classroom?
The challenge or the problem is that the Black experience and the Black Canadian experience in particular, it just, we don't see it in media, right? Whenever Blackness is portrayed in media, it's usually the African American experience, right? And even that doesn't get as much opportunities or time as it should. So think about, if the African American experience is the experience that we generally hear about, and even that is not being given the allotment or the time that it deserves, then the Black Canadian experience is even less. And what happens then is, if you don't know the Black Canadian experience, and if you don't understand how long we've been here and the contributions we've made to this country, it's very easy to other us. It's very easy to say that we don't belong here. And it's very easy then to discriminate against us and deny us access to all the opportunities that we should have. So, for instance, the fact that Black people have had a presence in this country before it was even called Canada, right? Our presence goes back to, we believe, 1606, somewhere around that time. The Black presence in Canada dates all the way back. People don't understand that. People don't know that. The Black Caribbean presence in Canada, right? We're talking, again, late 1700s. And I actually heard a teacher one time say to a student, and I tell this story all the time because it just baffles me. This was a teacher who was teaching history, and a student said, we were at a symposium, and a student put his hand up and he said, why don't we have more Black history in my grade 10 history class? And this teacher jumped up like he had the answer, the ultimate answer, to shut him down. He said, that's because your history doesn't exist beyond the 1960s in this country. And this was a history teacher, in the biggest school board in Canada, jumping up and saying this to a student. So again, there are gaps in teachers' education, there's gaps in the students' education, and this is where we feel it's absolutely necessary for us to know the Black Canadian presence. Its legacy. What are the three things you always say?
Longevity, identity, and contributions.
There you go.
Right. So it's important to know our longevity in the country. It's important to know our identity. And it's a rich and varied identity. It's not just one identity.
Yes.
And then important to know the contributions that we've been making to this country since we arrived here for the very first time that we know about in the 1600s. Because every student needs to have a sense of belonging. And if you're sitting there and you don't feel as though you belong, then learning is going to be very difficult. I heard someone say once, when you're looking at a picture of someplace where you were, the first thing you do is you look for yourself. Mm-hmm. So the curriculum is that picture, and students are looking for themselves in the curriculum. And so they need to know who they are. They need to know the rich legacy of education that we as Black people have here in Canada, and not just here in Canada, but in Africa as well, before the interruption of enslavement. So knowing all of this helps to center students' identity, helps other students to know about Black students, so they're not just putting them into that stereotype that they see in the media. And then, once everyone knows about each other, they're comfortable, and learning can be so much more authentic and organic.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I want to ask in regards to this, how can a lack, I got one or two ways I can go here. Okay, let me put it this way. How does a more inclusive curriculum benefit all students, not just Black students?
You want me?
Well, as we were saying earlier, it's so important that students know about each other. We live in a multicultural society, and so we can't exist in silos, and we can't have these expectations of each other and these stereotypes of each other, because then it's not going to make for a good, healthy learning environment. So by having an inclusive curriculum, everyone gets to see the contributions that different cultures have made to what they're learning in school. And then there's more of a respect for each other as students, and also for teachers of diverse backgrounds. So, everyone benefits from it. Everyone can learn from each other.
I mean, you don't want to start a movie halfway through, right? And we feel as though the education that we got, we didn't get the entire movie, right? There were parts of the movie that was missing, and we're piecing it together on our own and trying to figure out what happened when there are opportunities. And honestly, where else are they going to get these opportunities but in the classroom, right? In that kind of in a learning environment where, or in a safe space, as we were talking about before we started here.
Safe
right?
and brave.
Yes, safe and brave. Yes, right. So the classroom is that space, right? So this is where we can grapple with these kinds of things. This is where we can introduce these things, and this is where students can ask questions, and this is where educators and students can think critically and work through contributions and understand, where we are as a society and how we got here, right? A lot of times, you'll hear students say things and it just makes you cringe because they just don't know. So when they say things about, Black people, and this was actually, a student said this to me. I was in a school last month, and she said that a fellow student said to her, Black people haven't contributed anything to society. And she said she didn't know how to answer him, but she just knew that what he said wasn't right. It wasn't correct. So this is where we're giving them the answer, right? We're giving them the resources, and we're giving them the knowledge, and we're equipping them, not just the Black students, right? Because this student wouldn't have said something like that if this kind of information was given to him. If this was in the curriculum, there's no way that this student would even have that kind of a thought, or would even share that kind of a thought, because they would understand and they would know that that's absolutely untrue. So it's actually, in many ways, it's even more important for students of different backgrounds to understand the Black Canadian experience, because they're not going to hear it anywhere else, but in the classroom for the most part.
Okay. Then how can a lack of representation in textbooks and course materials impact students' sense of identity and belonging?
Well, it goes back to, again, not seeing yourself, so you feel as though you're on the periphery, just looking in, and you're seeing everyone else represented, but somehow you're not there. You're not in the picture. You're not important. So when students can actually see representation in their textbooks, in the pictures that are hanging on the walls in their classrooms, then they feel like, okay, I'm a part of this too. I'm important as well, and I'm going to make an effort to learn this material. But when this deficit is there, then we often lose our students because they feel like, well, this isn't really for me. I'm not an academic. Black people are not academics. What do we know about math? What do we know about science? What do we know about reading and writing? And so students often shut down and think, okay, I'm just about basketball and track and field. And, there's nothing wrong with that, because we want to be well-rounded, but we want to be able to have people recognize their aptitude in any area, so that then they can make informed choices about what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah. I remember growing up in the school system, one of the more challenging days for me was Remembrance Day, because they would always show us, all of these soldiers, and they'd say, these people gave their lives for you. And, you wouldn't enjoy the freedoms that you have if it wasn't for these people. And I never saw anyone who looked like me in these images that they were parading in front of me. Never heard of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, or Jeremiah Jones, or any of these Black Canadians who had been fighting for Canada since the War of 1812. Well, it wasn't actually Canada at that time, but what we now know as Canada. Black people have been fighting for Canada, or for this land, anyways, for a long time. And I didn't know anything about that. So during Remembrance Day, it felt like I didn't belong. It felt like this wasn't my story. There was no connection. And the wars, particularly World War I and World War II, are always sort of presented as the defining moments in Canadian identity. This is when Canada became recognized globally. And if I'm not seeing myself represented in that, then am I Canadian? Do I even feel like I belong here, right? And then do my classmates see me as Canadian? Do they see me as part of this picture? So this is why we feel it's really important to present this this type of learning in the curriculum. And it's, as I mentioned before, is just as important for students of different ethnic backgrounds as it is for Black students. But particularly, there's so many studies that talk about the fact that students do not achieve as well when they don't see themselves reflected in the curriculum.
Excellent, excellent. So just to do a reset here, we are talking to brother and sister team, Nelson authors, Greg and Coleen Birkett, about how to include the Black experience and diverse perspectives in the classroom. Another thing that Nelson has, they have a great learning platform. I'm just going to show it quickly on the screen for everybody. They call it Edwin. I had actually had an uncle named Uncle Edwin. Okay. All right. There we go. And
Edwin in our family.
there you see? You see what I mean? You see what I mean? So especially for educators, if you want a one-stop digital space to get education about a lot of different things, Edwin has this. So I will again put the link on the screen, but I also have in the comments section on most of the platforms that you're watching this live on replay. And there's some testimonials there, and over 50,000 students of teachers worldwide have logged into this site. So definitely, if you're an educator, check it out. It's a great site. All right, we are back. All right, so let's get to our next conversation piece here as we go around the Birkett world, as we say. So what are some common misconceptions or resistance educators face when trying to include diverse perspectives in the classroom?
You mean the resistance from students or?
You can answer that anyway. I'm just steering the ship. You're driving the ship.
All right, hands on the wheel. Okay. Some of the not necessarily a resistance, but I think some of the difficulty is educators sometimes are afraid of offending, and so sometimes they may be a little bit more reserved about bringing this into the classroom. And another thing is, just as we were talking about before, just the gaps in their own education. And, some of the feedback that we get, like even as we did the webinar, we did a nationwide webinar called See Us, Learn Us, and that was on Nelson's platform. And we were able to share with teachers across Canada. And a lot of teachers said, we didn't know what we didn't know, or we didn't know what we don't know, right? And so it's just, again, that gap that that educators have, because it was never a part of the curriculum before. And so there's a little bit of hesitancy then with approaching it and being able to actually teach it and bring it into the classroom. And then, sometimes some students may be a little bit more resistant because they've never seen this before. And they have, as Greg was saying, they have the notion that Black people didn't contribute anything, so it's like, why are we even talking about this? Or they don't understand why, they'll say, well, this person was the first Black person to do this or to do that. And it's like, well, so what? So they need to have it contextualized then to recognize how difficult it's been for Black people to access certain spaces and certain careers. So when a Black person now does it for the first time, they're the first Black person to do it, it's something big because you've overcome, right? So students need to be able to understand that, so that they're not hesitant to learn about this. They need to learn about the struggle and need to learn about the different types of racism and discrimination that Black people have faced that has, that have presented barriers for us to get ahead. And so some of the resistance sometimes is, so what? So what if it was the first Black person?
So Robin Maynard, author Robin Maynard, she says between 1967 to 1971, Canada gets a new flag, gets a new national anthem, adopts multiculturalism as a policy. And she says during that time period, Canada is more or less branding itself. Right. And with this branding, we're trying to separate ourselves from the United States. and we're trying to say some things like, the challenges that they face, racial issues that they face. This doesn't exist here in Canada. So after a while in social studies classes and history and geography and those kinds of things, we stopped talking about some of the things that happened here in the past. So we don't talk about residential schools. We don't talk about Japanese internment, and we don't talk about segregation, which was alive and well here in Canada, as well as enslavement, as I mentioned before, Black people and Indigenous people enslaved in Canada for roughly 200 years, right? So all of these things start to become phased out of the conversations that are had in classrooms, out of textbooks, out of learning material. So teachers then are educated in that system, and they don't get any of that. They haven't heard any of that, right? So it's now we're asking teachers, and we're saying, we'd like for you to speak about these things. We'd like for you to teach these things. And they're very, they're apprehensive, because you're standing at the front of the classroom. You're supposed to be the teacher. You've been given this title. You want to feel as though you're competent and that you can present this material. You're an expert on it. But they don't know, as Coleen said, they don't know what they don't know. And this is not excuse. This isn't an excuse, because we've got the internet now, and you have access to tons of resources, and you should put the work in, and you should do the work, right? But there is a level of apprehension, and they don't want to do it, and some of them are afraid, as Coleen said, that they're going to offend and that their voice isn't authentic. And we're encouraging them, okay, if you feel as though you can authentically present this material, number one, you need to start looking for resources and become educated in this curriculum yourself. Number two, you can bring in black voices from the community, right? So that you get that authentic voice in your classroom. Number three, if you have Black students in your classroom, you can tap into their prior knowledge and what they're bringing to the classroom as well. There's so many different ways you can go about this, but you need to start. You need to do it. You have to, right?
Just start.
Yeah, exactly. Just start, right? And it, we have some resources that we've developed that are very simple that you can use in your classroom, the day after you're introduced to these resources. But you need to start. You have to, right? But it is challenging, and a lot of them are, very afraid of messing it up, so to speak. Then, the other level of resistance that we're facing is because they weren't taught this in the curriculum. There is the idea that how important is this learning if we didn't learn it, right? You're telling us that we need to do this now, and I went through kindergarten to post-secondary and I never heard about this stuff. How important is it, right? Why should I learn it now? Why do I need to take time out of all that I'm doing, my marking and keeping up with the curriculum expectations that are rolled out, to now try to learn this and incorporate it? Because if it wasn't taught to me, why do my students need to learn it? And look at me, look at how I turned out. I'm fine, right? So there is that level of resistance there as well. And then, quickly, we also have to mention that there sometimes is a level of resistance from the students. So I remember trying to teach Lawrence Hill's The Book of Negroes to my grade 12 university prep English class. And there was all kinds of pushback from the students, and they were asking questions like, the other class is doing Catcher in the Rye. Why aren't we doing Catcher in the Rye? Why are we doing this book? And I tried to, explain to them that this book is winning awards. This book is good literature. I gave them the sell. I really tried to sell them on the book. They still didn't, they were still upset about it. At the end of the semester, after we'd read the book and, as part of the exam, everything, one student came up to me after everyone had left the classroom. He came up to me and he said, sir, I thought that you were pushing this book on us because you're Black, but it's actually a good book. And he, acknowledged that it was actually worthwhile reading. The next year, one of my colleagues decided that she was going to teach the book as well. She's not a Black woman. And we were in the same department. We were teaching grade 12 university English as well together. And she decided that she was going to teach the Book of Negroes. And that year, not a student complained, not one, because to them, if she's teaching it, and I'm, if she's teaching it, then it must be legitimate literature. But when the Black teacher brings it up, well, you're trying to push some kind of a Black agenda on us, and it's not as important as Catcher in the Rye. So those are some of the challenges that we face when we try to implement the Black Canadian experience into the curriculum.
Excellent. I have a comment and a question here. Comment. Salas and Lucien said representation is vital, and it appears the education system, quote, as is, unquote, is designed to maintain systemic ignorance and suppression of Black people. I appreciate the Birkett Education Institution. I didn't know you had an institution. Can I?
Man,
wow. I need to know what the Birkett is. All right. Oh, good stuff. Another conversation piece here. Associate for a digital friend from the South. He goes, I live in the Jim Crow South. One of our biggest fights is with the school system and state government when referencing our history. Are your problems as pronounced with the establishment up here in GTA, Toronto?
Ooh, man, that is a good question. So Canada's racism is a little bit different from the United States. And when we say different, we mean that sometimes it comes with a smile, and we don't always know what people are thinking. Whereas in the States, sometimes it's a little more upfront, and it can be challenging because it feels like you're shadow boxing. You're not seeing your opponent because they're not quite as in your face. There are challenges with the establishment, but what I will say is that we have seen improvements. We have seen things that would make it seem as though we should feel encouraged. I have, when I was in the classroom, I did receive support from my administration when I wanted to do things that were blatantly including the Black Canadian experience in my pedagogy. But there are challenges. So I've heard when I was in guidance, the head of my department. Well, let me not say that. Let me just say that we have heard people say things like, if Black students don't represent the larger part of our student body population, then why are we spending money on resources to address their needs, right? Shouldn't that money go towards students who make up a larger part of our student body? I've heard individuals say things of that nature. So yeah, we do sometimes see pushback from the establishment.
Yeah, and it's, as Greg said, it's more subtle. But when you look at things like, as I said earlier, when we look at documents from the 70s and 80s and 90s, calling for this same thing. And here we are now in the 21st century, still saying we need to see Black representation. So, as Greg said, we've seen progress, and we're just working, towards even greater progress.
Sorry, but I do want to say, my colleagues, when I was in guidance, when I was teaching, they were out for the most part anyways, they were supportive, and they saw what it was that I was trying to do, and they respected it. There were some who may not have wanted to do as much as I was doing, but I did get support in my English department, my history department, my guidance department, and I did get support from administration as well.
Yeah, definitely. And even as we go into schools now, we have people approaching us. Okay, where are some places that I can take students on field trips where they can learn about this, and teachers who are telling us, things that they're actually doing, or who see some of the resources that we're pointing them to, and they're jumping on it right away. So, there definitely is support, and there are definitely people who are who understand the need for this representation.
Well, I want to bless you for handling that question, because I didn't think you were expecting that one, but I shared it with the audience and I knew you can handle it. You've done it gracefully. Wonderful. The Nobiats, the guy says, for the same reason we provide food to our students. Same thing. There you go. Dave Lindsay says, I applaud this couple with their efforts to ensure that our story is presented authentically within the curriculum, and also
brother and sister, Dave Lindsay, brother and sister. I don't know how my wife would feel.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'm sure Coleen's sitting here saying, "He's
well,
my
you're
brother."
a couple. You're a couple brother and sister. You're a couple brother and sister. You're fighting the fight. All right. He also says, keep fighting the good fight. The students will remember being introduced to this material.
Thank you.
All right. Then how can teachers ensure that discussions about race, history, and identity are handled with sensitivity and accuracy?
Great question. As we talked about before, making use of community resources, because if you're not sure, then it's better to get someone who is an authentic voice and who can share some lived experiences so that students can see these issues are real. People have experienced them. And just making the effort to educate yourself so that you can be authentic and that what you're sharing is actually a reality.
And again, tapping into the prior knowledge of students in your class. If you do have Black students, not calling them out in front of everyone and singling them out, because that can be, very challenging and harmful as well. But speaking to Black students and seeing what they, what they feel comfortable sharing. I remember when I was doing my practice teaching, we wanted to do a poetry cafe, and we asked the kids, what kind of food do you want to bring in? And there were 2 Black students in the class. The school that I was doing my practice teaching at was predominantly white. There were 2 Black students in the class, and one Black student said, I want to bring in fritters. And I want to, right?
You didn't invite me.
Right? And another one said,
the show done. Next time, please and thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna just
and the other one said she wanted to bring in festival, right? So and I feel and I honestly believe that the comfort level for them to say that was because I was there, right? And to decide to bring these things in, and then the kids obviously are asking, what are these things? And then this is now an educational moment where we can talk to them about what this food is and what it means to us and to our culture. So allowing Black students the opportunity then to be a part of the curriculum and the learning process brings in that authenticity that we've been talking about as well, right? So teachers, learning from students is a big part of our job too, right? And again, being upfront, given the title teacher, it can be daunting and you want to feel like you're the expert. But when students see that you're willing to learn, it heightens their desire to learn as well.
Excellent. What role does literature, poetry, and storytelling play in helping students connect with diverse perspectives?
Great question. When you hear someone's story, that person becomes human, and you can find something that resonates with you regardless of your culture. So storytelling is just so important. It's how knowledge is passed on from generation to generation. It's how knowledge is shared between individuals. So storytelling definitely, and literature. We need a paradigm shift, because as Greg was talking about before, what's considered literature doesn't speak to everyone. So having literature that is representative of different cultures, again, helps people to see that there's good writing that can come out of any culture. There's stories that every culture has to share. There are lessons that can be learned from every culture. There's similar experiences among people of different cultures, and literature really, really brings that out. And poetry is such a beautiful way that people can then express themselves, right? Being able to get words together in a succinct way, but to give a powerful message, and to be able to show your own creativity in your own way, just really enhances learning.
And sometimes the arts are a good entry point into discussing challenging topics that otherwise would be very difficult to talk about, right? So, for instance, you're watching a particular show or a play that's tackling issues like stereotyping or racism, and then, as Coleen said, poetry. Poetry, these are the best entry points into talking about subjects that otherwise would be very sensitive and very difficult to actually address. So, for instance, there's a spoken word piece that I have where I'm talking about cutting my son's hair because I give my son haircuts. Well, now his hair is braided, but before, when he wanted haircuts, I'd give him a haircut. And there's so much that happens when I'm giving him a haircut. I'm teaching him self-care and all those kinds of things, but I'm also teaching him to appreciate his hair, right? And the fact that sometimes, Black hair is not seen as quality hair or not seen as quote unquote good hair, right? But when I'm cutting his hair and I'm taking time and I'm lining it up and doing all these kinds of things, it's teaching him to be proud of it. So then I thought that I would put that into a poetic piece. And that was a way into talking about hair, and in particular Black hair, because of all of our features, I think that's the one that's most distinct is our hair, right? So that to me, using art then is an entryway into talking about, sometimes why we're discriminated against because of our hair, texture, or even hairstyles. Sometimes, we butt up against discrimination and stereotyping. And all these kinds of things then I can bring to the table because I used art as an avenue into addressing these issues. So storytelling, literature, poetry, all of that is just exceedingly important when we're trying to talk to students of all backgrounds about our experiences, our lived experiences. Ooh. We can't hear you.
There we go.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. So how can schools and educators push back against curriculum limitations or institutional barriers that exclude Black narratives?
Wow. How can schools? Well, see, I think one of the first things that educators probably should try to do is to speak to systems leaders, right? So to speak to principals, to speak to superintendents, to speak to board directors, but it goes both ways. So I think systems leaders also need to listen to those who are on the front line, right? We have all this data and we compile all these, these numbers to talk about why Black students seem like they're being outperformed by their peers. And we're wondering why suspension rates are higher with regard to Black students and all these kinds of things. Okay, maybe you need to speak to the front line, to those who are teaching Black students. Maybe you need to speak to the front line, to community representatives or to community organizations and outlets in Black communities to find out what's going on and not just to find out what's going on, but to hear suggestions, right? So I think one of the best ways for educators and schools to address, the need for this in the curriculum is to talk to systems leaders and to say, we would like to be educated as educators. We would like the education, make this part of our professional development, right? So that we can learn about this and then we can actually feel comfortable bringing this into our pedagogy, bring in the community, right? Bring the community into our professional development. So our professional learning, right? So that we then feel like we're getting it from that authentic voice, right? We're seeing some of this happening with, and there still needs to be more, but we're seeing some of this happening with Indigenous education, right? Where they are tapping into the community and they are bringing that voice in, the authentic voice, and educators are learning from them. And the same thing needs to be happening where the Black Canadian experience is concerned. So, talking to systems leaders, heading to the top, right? Because this is where it has to come down from the top. And it's not going to feel as though it's important or necessary if the top isn't speaking the same language.
Right. Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and sometimes there are some teachers who take some initiatives themselves. For example, we were speaking with a teacher just yesterday who he's teaching a course, and he noticed that, it just had this one thing about Matthew DaCosta, who's the first Black man in Canada. And then he said after that, there was nothing. And before that, there was nothing. And so he felt that they needed to have the students learn about the contributions from Africa prior to enslavement. And so he brought us in, to talk about that and to address that. And he's not just keeping it to himself, but he's talked with other teachers who are teaching the course. And, so he's mobilizing and getting things done. And, this will hopefully also reach to the system leaders, and they'll see, okay, people really want this. We need to start making some changes.
All right. Comment and question. First, the comment. Melanie on LinkedIn says, great session. I focused my graduate research on how race and ethnocultural equity policies trickled down into Ontario high schools in the 1990s, including diversity in curriculum and inclusion. You've reminded us that this advocacy is needed in every generation, because here we are still in 2025.
Yes, yes, 100%.
Yes. Because we look at the curriculum and we do see names sometimes of Black Canadians, but the teachers don't know who they are. And so they will stick with who they know, right? So that absolutely, Melanie, that advocacy needs to continue.
100%.
Nobody asked me. Guy has another interesting question saying, how do you feel about having having to have a quote special unquote platform to openly speak and teach about quote Black unquote experience and our place in the world?
Yeah, I think if I'm reading this correctly, I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have it woven into the fabric of every part of our curriculum, so that it's not just reserved for a special month or a special class, right? So right now in the high school curriculum, we do have a grade 12 course that is, that speaks about the Black Canadian experience. And Coleen and I have actually co-authored a textbook with Rosemary Sadler, Joy Martyr Andre, a few others, right? Who we worked on a textbook that is being used in some school boards here in the province, and being used in Nova Scotia and in Bermuda as well. But again, this textbook was written particularly for a specific course, right? What we want to do, as I mentioned before, we want to take this vertical cross-curricular approach. So from kindergarten, and some people would say, well, how would you do this with kindergartens, or why would you do this with kindergartens? This is when they're most open and ready and willing to learn, right? They're sponges at this point in time. Yes. So you bring it to them at this time, make it age appropriate for them, and we have resources for that. And when I say we, yes, Coleen and I, but there are lots of resources out there, lots of books that are written for the kindergarten level, right? The other day, we were speaking to that said that they were teaching a kindergarten class about what's his name? Yeah, Elijah McCoy.
Oh yes,
right. Teaching them about Elijah McCoy, and then they had them
make trains, because Elijah McCoy he invented the lubricator cup, which allowed steam engines then to be able to go for longer periods of time.
Black man from Colchester, Ontario, right? So you bring it into kindergartens, and they're learning, and you're giving them the opportunity to see themselves reflected in the curriculum, and then for kids of other ethnicities, they're seeing the contributions that we've made, right? And they're learning about that from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. So as the question was asked there, we don't want a special platform. We want this to be a natural, organic, as Coleen said, it's just part of the curriculum. This is just, it's Canadian history. It's not Black Canadian history that's taught during February or in a particular class that kids who are interested or have a vested interest will take, right? This is something that has to be woven in to every subject across disciplines, right? The cross-curricular piece, and then from kindergarten to grade 12. If we're wondering why Black students are being outperformed, or if it feels as though they're being outperformed by their peers, as Coleen said, they're checking out. Some of them are checking out earlier because they're not seeing themselves reflected in that picture that you mentioned, right? And that picture needs to be developed from kindergarten, right? Not in grade 10 or 11.
Yeah. And if I could just add.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So next week, I'm actually going to be going into a daycare center and sharing stories of Black Canadians. The week after that, I'll be going to a kindergarten class and sharing, as well as grades 1 to 3. And as Greg said, it's important that we start the kids from young so that they feel as though it's just a natural part of the fabric of their education. And, when I think about Carter Woodson, he's the father of Black history. He's the one who started as Black History Week in 1926. It's since grown into Black History Month. And, he selected February because Black people were already celebrating Frederick Douglass's birthday and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. So he linked it to that. But his intent with that was that it would be a celebration of what they've been learning throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And what's been happening now is that it just ends up being a month-long celebration as opposed to a celebration of what we've been learning all along. And so we need to have that come back, celebrating what we've been learning all along, instead of, having to be on a special platform or just being able to bring it to the forefront during the month of February.
And what we see sometimes during February as well is sort of this commodification or even just a sort of a checkbox kind of thing, and where sometimes it's a very surface celebration, and we're not learning. And Black History Month, as far as we're concerned, if you haven't learned anything in Black History Month, if you go through these 28 or 29 days of February and you didn't learn anything, but you saw some great dance moves, mm-hmm. and you heard some really nice songs, and you had a patty with some cocoa bread, then
and a ting.
Yeah, to wash it down.
Good thing.
Yeah. Yes. Right. If that's your Black History Month experience, then you really didn't celebrate Black history.
Just building on that, how can educators move beyond just teaching Black history in February and make it a year-round conversation?
Mm-hmm. Educators need to be educated, and educators need to seek education. Right? If they're willing to be the lifelong learners that they encourage students to be, then you'll see that for them as well, it'll become a very natural part of what they do. So if you're teaching science and you wait until February to start talking about Black scientists, that's there's something wrong with that, right? This has got to be something that you're looking to include people of different ethnic backgrounds from the beginning of the course all the way through. It's got to be something that that's a part of your pedagogy. It's a part of your professional approach to education. It's not something that you do to check off a box or to say that I'm good. I did it in February when we're supposed to do it. It's got to be something that you are actively working at. Anything that you do, whatever profession you're in, you're constantly learning. You're constantly striving to be better. I don't know. I would be scared to go to a doctor that is the same doctor that graduated, 10 years ago or whatever from med school. I'm hoping that my doctor is trying to stay current and find out new things about medicine and new approaches. And it's the same thing with education, right? It's a profession, and you need to get better at it and sharpen your tools all the time.
Right. And, to add to what Greg was saying, as he talked about, in science class, there's so many different areas where it can just be inserted. If they're talking about vaccines, they can talk about how there was an inoculation against smallpox in Africa. And that's why one of the reasons why they felt that Africans were good to be enslaved, because many of them were immune to smallpox because they actually had an inoculation. And, talk about Onesimus, who saved an enslaved man who actually saved Boston from being decimated by smallpox because he shared how they were inoculating in Africa. So include that when you're talking about vaccines. When you're talking about genetics, talk about Dr. Juliet Daniel, researcher at McMaster University, Black woman. She discovered the gene Chiso, that is important in cancer research, right? So just inserting those things. Search engines that we use every single day, everybody all over the world. The first search engine was invented by a Black man right here in Canada, right?
McGill, Alan Emtage.
Alan Emtage, that's right. So it's important that you can just put these things in when you're talking about in your transportation technology class. Include Oliver Bowen, who developed, the engineer, Black man who developed the first LRT system in Calgary, right? So there's so many opportunities that this can be inserted in the curriculum. So it behooves educators, and we're here to help to be able to find these things and find where they can insert them in the curriculum. And sorry?
I was just going to say, I haven't heard the word behoove in a long time, but that's that was good. But also, what I like is, almost every example that you brought up was a Black Canadian example.
Yes.
And again, this is where it's really important to have students understand the contributions of Black Canadians, right? Again, if we do hear any contributions, we'll hear, Garrett Morgan invented the traffic light, and George Washington Carver with the peanuts, and those are African Americans, and I appreciate that. And that was pretty much my introduction to Black history. But to hear that Black Canadians have done what they've done and the contributions we've made, right? There'd be no slap shot in the NHL if it wasn't for the Colored Hockey League introducing the slap shot, right? All of these kinds of things. And this is, how much more Canadian does it get than hockey? And we often feel as though that we're not a part of that either, right? But we're a huge part of that. So, finding a way to ensure that every student understands that Black Canadians are a huge part of Canadian culture, heritage, our past, our present, the Canadian identity, and the future of Canada, right? So it's really important that we bring these Black Canadian examples into the classroom, and there's so many of them to bring.
Yes, and we've written about quite a lot of them in Edwin.
Yes.
So also, teachers, Edwin can help tremendously with bringing that into the classroom.
Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry to talk about Edwin as well. It's really important that we talk about just the different things that we've contributed to Edwin. So all of the historic Black communities, we wrote pieces about those in Edwin. So from Hogan's Alley in Vancouver to Little Burgundy in Montreal to Little Jamaica here in Toronto, right? All of those are included, in Edwin. Those are some of the materials that we've created. We have a really cool piece actually about Little Jamaica in on Edwin, right? The piece with Royce and James and others involved in that as well. So
we've written about people like Thornton and Lucy Blackburn, who started the first taxi cab service here in Toronto.
Right.
So
okay,
all of that.
Yeah.
You guys don't sleep. You guys don't sleep. There's no way. Man, are you like sleep is for suckers or something? I don't know. So again, for those who are watching live on the replay, there is the Edwin site, edwin.app, and both Greg and Coleen have contributed to it. So even more reason you should check it out. All right, as we start winding it down, how can parents, students, and communities advocate for more inclusive education materials?
Well, learning is an entire school community responsibility. So parents definitely need to speak to the elected officials, right? So to counselors and to superintendents and who am I missing there?
Directors,
right? Just any again, as I said before, systems leaders, right? Parents need to reach out to them and to speak to them and to let them know that this is the learning that they want to see in schools, right? Students, you have a voice as well, right? You can definitely send emails or go to the offices of the systems leaders as well. I've seen students advocate for themselves in many different ways for many different things. So, your education, your curriculum, what you're being taught should be a priority for you as well. So parents and students definitely have a voice that they can use and should use with regard to what they want to see in education.
And some have even spoken to the media. I've seen parents and students in the media saying, yes, this is what we want. And I think the more directions it's coming from, the greater change we're going to see.
100%.
Want to shout out America Patton, who's tuning in from Kansas City, Kansas.
All
Thank you
right.
for joining the conversation. Amazing. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Next up, what role do Black educators, authors, and creators play in the shaping in the future, play in the future of shaping education?
That's amazing. Yeah, I think Black educators play a huge role. And by saying that it's not Black educators' responsibility to educate their peers, which sometimes it feels, sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes that's a weight that Black educators feel that you're a burden sometimes that they have to carry, that they feel like they have to educate everyone else. I think being involved, being present is important for Black educators, right? So being involved in extracurricular activities, a boys club or just so many different extracurriculars that they can be involved in, so that students see them, see their visibility and know that they are invested or vested in them. I think that really helps. The BSAs, so the Black Student Associations, right? Black educators have opportunities to sponsor those, to be the staff sponsor, or to be the staff supervisor for Black student associations. I didn't have that at my school when I was in high school, but there, we go around to so many different high schools, and they're thriving Black student associations, and sometimes they're led by Black educators and sometimes not, right? So this is an opportunity, or this is a space where Black educators can definitely have an impact as well. And again, just Black educators, as we've been saying all along, or as maybe I've been saying all along, Black educators can reach out to systems leaders as well and talk about opportunities that might exist for them to maybe lead some professional development, or to bring in resources, or to talk about community organizations that would be good to bring into the school, right? I do remember there was a challenge that at a school that I was working at, and I was able to bring in Tropicana, and they were able to come in and help and do some really good work in the school. So, as a Black educator, there are many opportunities for you to be a leader and to be an advocate as well. Coleen kind of alluded to it before. There are different ways that Black students sometimes communicate. And sometimes I remember at a school that I was working at, a student was taken into the office, and he asked for me specifically. He asked the principal if she could bring me in. I came in, and he said, "Mr. Birkett, can you please explain to them what Padna is?" And I was wondering, why do you want me to explain what Padna is? And what happened was his mom had given him the Padna money. And he
Don't go there. Oh, don't you need? Okay, go there.
He had the money, and they thought that he was for a kid that age to have that amount of money.
Money.
They thought that he was doing something illegal. And then I had to come in and explain what Padna is, right? So, sometimes being an advocate for them. There have been times where, Black students, Black people in general, the way we express joy sometimes is different from the way other people express joy. So you'll see some Black students in the hallway, they're laughing, and sometimes when we laugh, we push each other, right? Yeah. And we're hitting each other, we're hitting the locker, we're banging the locker, somebody's running down the hall laughing, throwing themselves up, and the teachers are wondering, what's going on? Nothing's going on. They're having fun. Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. All of that. Right. It's like, sometimes we have to advocate and jump in and say, no, this is part of our culture. This is how we express, I'm sure, you walked in on a domino game where, someone else might think a fight is about to break out, right? They're just having fun.
Yeah.
So sometimes, as Black educators, we need to be advocates as well, in helping others understand who we are and how we express ourselves culturally.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, and Greg said this a little bit too, just showing up and being there. I remember two things. A Black girl coming into my class, and then she saw that she was grade 9, just come to the school. When she saw that it was a Black teacher teaching math, the way her face lit up, and she just carried that light throughout the entire school year. And she did really well in math that year. And there was another time where there was a student, and from the time he walked into my class again, he was just looking at me and just this big smile, and he would actually follow me around in the classroom with his head on my shoulder. And, I never told him, take your head off my shoulder and stop following me around, because I found out afterwards he kind of needed a mother figure, and he didn't read very well. And he was, kind of a clown as well. And so a lot of teachers were just kicking him out of their classes. And so, I would always let him come into my class. I took time during my prep to sit with him and help him read, and had him keep a journal. And it really made a difference in his life. He owns his own business today. And, so just showing up and being there for our students really, really makes a difference.
Yes.
Okay. So Celeste and Lucian say it's a collective approach. The workplace, I took the initiative to celebrate and ended up educating my peers and upper management about the Black national anthem, which was foreign to them. Nobody asked me. Guys said, well, thank you for sharing that. Celeste and Lucian say, not just a special platform or month, but every day, every moment being a teachable moment.
Yes,
100%.
yes, definitely. Yeah.
100%.
Love it. One or two more quick things. I know time is fleeting, but because you guys don't sleep. Just to build on what you just shared, then, how can schools better support Black teachers and students to ensure they feel that they're seen, heard, and valued?
Well, I think listening is where it all starts, really. Communication, asking them, what it is that they'd like to see. I recall one time there were some teachers that wanted to start a club for Black boys, but they weren't including some of the Black male teachers in the school. And to me, it was interesting. It was like, you're not going to include the Black male teachers who were once Black boys in a club for Black boys, right? And when I say that, I think they meant well. I don't think they were doing it maliciously, but you need to speak to us. You need to hear what we're thinking, what we think is necessary, and you need to sometimes, and I know that we don't use the word now is generally co-conspirator. We used to say ally before, but we don't use ally now. We talk about co-conspirator, because the co-conspirator goes further than an ally. But a co-conspirator also is someone who can give you access to things that we might not have access to, right? So acknowledging first and foremost that privilege exists, and that you have privileges that I don't have, and then being willing to ensure that I have privileges and that or access to the privileges that you have, and speaking up in rooms that I don't have access to, and listening and taking what I'm saying seriously, and being an advocate along with me. I think those are the kinds of things that, just support, and genuine support, not lip service, right? Genuine support, not jumping on when it's trendy. We saw, after what happened to George Floyd, that there were a lot of people that were, wanting to help at that point in time, and then 2 or 3 years later, they're not there, right? So, not just when something huge happens, that you decide then to lend your support, but we need your support all the time, irregardless of what's going on, because you're not seeing it, but we're living it all the time, right? So yeah, just that advocacy and that support and the listening.
Right, and I just wanted to add, which is related to what Greg is saying, that Black teachers need to feel as though they belong as well, and that as though they're an important part of the staff and a valuable part of the staff also, because that helps tremendously in terms of feeling supported. So, if you're sitting in a circle, include the Black teacher. Don't leave the Black teacher on the outside of the circle. And I've experienced that, where I was sitting down and nobody wanted to sit. And the minute I got up, they took my chair and they made a circle. And when I came back, my chair was gone. So just being able to feel like you belong, just as we want the students to feel like they belong in the classroom. We feel very supported when we are made to feel as though we belong as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Nobody Asked Me Guy show said they must feel seen, heard, and taken seriously, because being Black is more than a costume and the continuous attempt to reduce us to simply entertainers. All right.
And again, I do want to say that I did receive a lot of, I did receive a lot of support at the schools that I worked at, in the departments that I worked in, but there's always room for more and for improvement. And for all Black staff to feel that way, because there were Black staff who did express that they didn't feel that support. So, again, it's important, and it's incumbent on all staff members, from the administration down to make sure that they're being exceedingly inclusive of Black educators in the building.
Okay. So as we start winding out, because I don't want to let you guys go, but again, you got to sleep. Any suggestions for school boards in Canada?
I think, again, professional development, where the Black Canadian experience is concerned, it's got to start with the systems leaders, with the directors, with the superintendents. If they advocate for it, and if they are intentional about ensuring that educators are going to be educated and receive professional development and professional learning, then educators, I think, you're not going to get 100% buy-in, but you'll get more buy-in, I think, if they feel as though they are prepared, and if they feel as though they're getting practical professional development and ways to implement. So not just giving them a list of resources and saying, here, go, because a lot of them will say, listen, this is difficult for me to add this extra reading and this extra research to do. But if you actually give them practical ways that they can implement this into their everyday teaching pedagogy, then I think you'll see a difference. And again, a lot of that can be found on Edwin, rather. And through Nelson Education. Yes, there it is again, right? There's so many resources there that exist, and many that we've worked on and developed in partnership with Nelson, that educators can go to and find very low prep. And this is what teachers are always looking for: low prep resources and activities that they can plug in and implement very easily into their classrooms across disciplines.
Yes, and then we did CS Learnus. We did it 3 years consecutively, and again, that was on the Nelson platform, and it was national. Yes. And we had systems leaders who attended and then purchased it so that every teacher in their board could actually attend. Yes. And by attending, then they learned a lot about Black Canadian history and the Black Canadian experience, and they got lots of ideas of how to implement this across the curriculum. So just for systems leaders to continue to support professional learning like that, continue to make it available to their teachers, would really make a difference.
Sorry, and the elected officials that I forgot, trustees, right? Yes. You have directors, you have superintendents, you've got trustees, counselors, principals, vice principals. These are the people that educators need to hear this message from, that the Black Canadian experience is important, and it's a part of the Canadian experience. It's part of the Canadian narrative, and it needs to be implemented all the way through.
Okay. Other than Edwin, are there any other places that people can find the resources that you have overflowing to the world?
BirkettEducation.com.
Mm-hmm.
Please check out our website. We've got tons of material there, resources, and then you can also yes, and there it is. And you can also see our workshops, right? So we've got workshops that we offer, professional learning workshops for staff, and then we've also got workshops for students, right? So we believe, and parents actually, we believe in educating whole school communities, right? So not just for students, not just for staff, but for parents as well. We have workshops, and we also, with our resources, we also even have dramatic plays that we've written so that drama teachers and those who are working with Black student associations for not just Black History Month, but anytime you're interested in putting on a production, we've got plays there that you can use, and you can also have us come in and help you workshop and implement those plays as well. We also partner with Defining Moments, and also the brothers. Richard and
the Pickard brothers.
The Pickard brothers, who have written a book called Gaudi, and they have a whole curriculum that goes along with this novel that can be implemented, that really again speaks to the Black Canadian experience.
And the workshops that are listed there, we have more. They're not even all listed there. So, contact us, let us know what you're interested in. And, we can tailor them also to suit, because we do present also to businesses.
Yep,
so not just corporations. So we can certainly tailor what we present as well.
All right, fantastic. Two more. First of all, what is one key takeaway you want educators to remember about teaching the Black Canadian experience?
One key takeaway.
For me, it would be that, and we say this often, but the Black Canadian population is not a monolith. So if you know the Black Jamaican Canadian community, that doesn't mean that then Black people in Canada. The Black Canadian, the Black Jamaican population is one part of the Black community or Black communities in Canada. You've got Black communities from Africa. So we've got a large Nigerian population. We've got a large Somali population. And then there are other Caribbean islands, not just Jamaica. There, Trinidadian, Barbadian, Grenadian, Saint Vincent, Antiguan. And then we also need to know about the Black Canadian population that's been here for many, many years, right? So we're talking about those who are descendants of those who were enslaved, or those who came as part of the Black Loyalists, or the Black refugees of the War of 1812, or the Maroons, or those who came to seeking employment on the CP rail, right? So those who came and brought their families from the United States, those who came from the United States as part of the Exodusters and settled in Saskatchewan and Alberta. The Black Canadian population is exceedingly diverse. So I just want educators to understand and know that you don't meet one or two Black people or learn about one part of the Black Canadian population and feel as though, well, then this kind of applies. It's very diverse. So you want to keep that in mind as well when you're approaching teaching the Black Canadian experience.
And for me, the takeaway I would like educators to have is that the Black Canadian experience is rich, it's varied, and it fits in every subject area in the curriculum. Even things like entrepreneurship. right here in Toronto, we had so many Black entrepreneurs, and this is like way back in the 1800s, you know. So when you're teaching entrepreneurship, you need to include that as well, you know. And I'm trying to come up, like, show you, you know, the subject areas that you think that there may not be a possibility, but the possibilities are endless.
Yes.
So don't limit yourself, because it allows you also to be very creative and see how you can actually include this in the curriculum. And, you know, the learning experience itself is just so enriching, and it allows you to be able to relate better to your Black students as well.
I was going to ask for any final words of encouragement for teachers striving to create more inclusive anti-racist classrooms, but I think you covered it all there. So that's a wrap. That's a wrap. Ryan Knight, my co-host on the Morning Vibe, Monday and Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, says, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share with our family today. I really appreciate it. Hope you did also.
Yes,
thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
You made it very easy to talk.
Yes, definitely.
We don't talk, we share.
Yes.
We share. We share.
Got it,
So if you want to find out more about the brother and sister team, not couple, brother and sister, you know, there's Nelson Education, but really, if you want, go to Edwin. That's when you log in, register, and then you can see all the great hard work they've put in to showcasing the Black Canadian journey, not history, journey. Very, very important. And then also you can catch them at their website, birketteducation.com, and email address info@birketteducation.com. All right, I'm going to just leave you with this. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. If you're not making money, make history. And make it better. We'll leave on that. Thank you so much. If there's anything I can do to potentially help you, you know where I am, around the corner from the old Nelson building. We'll just leave it at that. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. Be well and keep the faith. All right, family. That is it. Great conversation. Really enjoyed it as always. And I want to say thank you, whether you're watching live or on the replay, making it a great conversation. So, a little bit of housework before we finish up. As always, please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, email me, dr.vibe@thedrshow.com. You can watch replays of this epic conversation called The Dr. Vibe Show on The Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and on my website, thedrshow.com. So this is how we ended off all our conversations. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace again. And if you're not making money, make history and make it better. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good. And celebrate Black History Month not only 12, every month, every day of every month of the year. God bless. Wow.
Yep.
I feel like I'm in class with Dr. Alicia. That's a class I wouldn't skip. There's some other ones I'd like to skip, but I'm glad I'm not skipping this class tonight. So I am hoping you're catching this live, but if not, certainly catch it on the replay, because this is good stuff that Joe is laying down here. I want to get ready. When I saw this today, I said one word. Hi-ya!
Did you really?
No, I felt like it's an incredible document that I'm going to suggest that you take and use as a lecture piece wherever you want to go.